it's a pleasure to be here with you all from Boulder, Colorado. Actually, I live in Longmont now. And, I really wish that Jacques was here in person, but before he left for Paris, and he deserves a vacation, he did do the second half of this presentation for us. And it was very important to me because we did this together. So this presentation is about a case. So we're going to talk about the case, what I call the 1945 San Antonio, New Mexico case, not San Antonio, Texas. When I was in Italy, I was living in Italy from 1992 to 2007. When I came back to the United States, I had read in a journal, it was a Socorro journal, I think it was called a Socorro Guardian, about two little boys that had witnessed a crash on their father's land, and that they were described as two little Indian boys on horseback. And when this article came out, my first thought was, why aren't my colleagues jumping on it? Because it was so detailed about where it was, about the date that it was, which is exactly 1 month after the atomic bomb, that, we know the date. The boys were witnesses who approached me about this. And I didn't know it was going to be me to do the story, because I said my colleagues should jump on this. And then I moved back to the United States. I get this call from William Brophy, who is the son of the pilot that overflew that area and was part of the recovery. And he starts talking to me about what his dad did. And then he mentions the two little Indian boys who are not Indian, Remy Baca and Jose Padilla. Jose was 9 and Remy was 7. They're Hispanic. The Baca family actually comes from Spain. So that whole area, and of course, Jose Padilla's family has Native American roots. In fact, when I started doing the story, I noticed that it was Native American land. It was Apache land. I mean, Geronimo had been there. And Jose's family was also connected with Native American. His great grandmother was Apache. That's why she's on the cover of the book. I knew it was history, and I had started working on it a whole 5 years before Jacques Vallée worked on it. And I had taken several film crews and several people there to see the site and talk to Jose. The person that ended up doing the story on it was Jaime Maussan from Mexico. He came with the drone, he came with a crew. He took a piece of the metal and he had it analyzed. And I'll talk about that in my presentation. I consider Jaime Maussan from Mexico one of the greatest journalists. He's not a UFO researcher, he's a journalist like me. He's an investigative journalist. He does detective work. And one of the greatest ever, because he realized the importance of the story when he came. He made a show about it. It's on Gaia in Spanish. And I think he did it also in English. It just sort of sat there. I did the interviews, and it's a good thing that I did, because after the call I got from Brophy, he gave me the telephone number of the 7-year-old. His name was Remy Baca, and he lived in Gig Harbor, Washington. It's a good thing I got to him because he died about 2 or 3 years later. And I have his testimony, not only on video, and you're going to see it in a minute, but I have his extensive testimony done on audio, transcribed, and that's what Jacques used because he never got to meet Remy Baca. Jacques and I connected 4 years ago when he was in Dattle, New Mexico, looking up a crash site that had metals. Jacques is extremely interested in metals. He has the ability to do a lot of analysis with Gary Nolan in Silicon Valley. I mean, they have the equipment there to do metals. If you've seen the movie James Fox movie, The Phenomena. At the end, there's Jacques and Gary Nolan looking at, in the lab, looking at metal. So when he found out that this also had metal, this case, he reached out to me, and we met in Socorro, and we went back for 3 years after that together to do this. So let me tell you the story. It's an incredible story, but you got to understand that it's true. This is a true story. When I began working on it, I only can work on it in field research methods, which means I have to fly to the place. I have to either get a hotel. In the case of Remy Bach, I stayed at his house. And when I went to interview the 9-year-old Jose Padilla, and I've been there, my goodness, at least for the last 9 years. I have to stay in a hotel, I have to rent a car, and I have to spend a lot of time with the witnesses because all kinds of things come out. Last year, we found a third witness, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the presentation. But to give you a flavor and a feeling for what this story is about, I need to play this film that I had done because it deals with the atomic bomb. I have the feelings that after all the research I've done, that whatever is visiting, whatever is flying out around there has an agenda. And the agenda is not to have a nice vacation on planet Earth. The agenda is that when we change something on the timeline, as we did with the effect of the atomic bomb, someone notices because it affects that being's or those beings' reality. My feeling is that when the bomb was exploded in Trinity, and Jacques makes it very clear in the book Trinity that that was not a test, it was a full-scale atomic bomb, the same kilotons as Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And when Jacques did the history behind this, I read the books that he read, and we were in shock because there are new books coming out about the Manhattan Project. So let me start with this little film clip because this will give you a feeling where we're going on this lecture. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to play this for you so that you can see, you can actually feel and see what happened.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In the dead silence of the morning, at 5:29:45 Mountain War time, the Jornada del Muerto was bathed in an intense flash of a light that man had only seen from the stars.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Texas case, 1945, were two little boys, Jose Padilla and Remy Baca, and Jose was 9 and Remy was 6. So we no longer have Remy with us. So it's very important that we capture for the future, for future generations, and for the history of this phenomenon, what happened here. And it's very great that we can actually come on location and do this. My part in it is that I started in 2009 talking to Remy Baca about this case. And it took about 3 years to actually come on location to the crash site. When I came on location for the first time, I was with James Fox and Ethan, and we were here and we had to film it. Do you remember, Jose? Because we wanted to get your testimony. Yes. And you remember James took you up on that hill and had you recite exactly what it was like to watch the craft. Yes, it was.
We were looking for a cow that was going to calve.
Can you take your glasses off, or do you need them?
No.
Do you need them?
No. I can see too good, but. And we were dodging the rain, a heavy storm, when a thunder, real thunder came up. And I told Remy, it must be another test from another bomb. And he says, no, he says, he doesn't look like that. So we got from underneath the ledge of the rocks, and he says, look at the smoke coming up from the ledge out there. So we got on the horses and trot down here, down the arroyo. We stopped over here, tied the horses over to a mesquite.
And so we made our way up there. And as we went over the ridge, we saw a lot of smoke and brushes on fire. And it's the kind of smoke that kind of like chokes you. You can't breathe very well. We retreated, continued to work our way through. As we did, we saw this gouge in the earth, a gouge that was maybe like 100 foot wide. We didn't know of any large graters at that time that were that big, but that's what we thought maybe might have made that crevice, basically. And so we followed that crevice through, and towards the end of it, there was an object that shaped like an avocado.
How close did you get to the object?
It would say that's about 300-400 feet from there down to here.
Okay, that's at that time.
That first day, yeah.
The very first day.
Yeah.
And then what did you observe? Can you describe what it looked like to you as you were looking at it?
It was something that I had never seen before.
Right.
It wasn't an airplane.
But it was this oval-shaped object. Now, was it symmetrical in terms of all the sides were the same, or was it like egg-shaped, like maybe one side was bigger than the other? Or was it...
No, it was like a true oval,
okay,
smooth,
okay,
and on the back it had a dome.
Okay.
On the back end, which is pointed out to the north.
And what color was it?
It was a kind of a rustic green, grayish.
Okay. Rustic green.
Rustic green, like they had thrown a lot of dust.
Okay. And
Okay, so I wanted you to see that because I also brought down a group from MUFON. I tried in all the ways possible to get this story out because we were on location. We saw where it happened. The two witnesses are telling the truth. I mean, they're not making this up. It's 60 years they were keeping it secret because Jose had moved away. He had gone to the Korean War at the age of 17, and Remy had gone to California also very young. They got married very young, and they never really saw each other until Jose's son did a genealogy search, and then they reconnected sometime in 2007, 2008. They reconnected and they said, do you remember what we lived through? Do you remember what we saw? And then they began to look at it. Now, one of the reasons they kept it quiet is because, and I'm going to talk about this, so is Jacques, is because they watched the 7 or 8 day recovery. And when the soldiers went to the Owl Barn Cafe, which is still there, very historic, because behind the Owl Barn Cafe is where the Manhattan Project scientists had their cabins. It was the only watering place in town. It had a soda fountain. It had a grocery store, and it was on the Pan American Highway route. And they knew that the young boys, who were the same young boys who were involved in the Manhattan Project, and because Jose Padilla, that you just saw, at 9 years old, was driving a truck and bringing hamburger to the Owl Barn Cafe, he knew everybody in there. He had seen Oppenheimer. He even talks about it in the book. He had seen those Manhattan scientist guys, and he knew the young guys because that's who was there in 1945. There was hardly anything there in that town. So when they were cleaning up, the young boys, when they finished the job and they put a tarp on the avocado-shaped craft, they went back to the Owl Barn Cafe. They knew they had a long drive. They probably brought it to Los Alamos, and to see the girls and to have a last drink. They left everything the way it was. And because Jose Padilla wanted a souvenir, he opened up the tarp with Remy. He asked Remy for a crowbar. He went inside and he took a piece off the wall of the inside of the UFO. And that's going to be part of my presentation. This film that I had made is to explain the emotion that Oppenheimer had after he did what he did. And they all did what they did. Fermi was there, Nobel Prize winning physicist from Italy, because he was, he worked with the atom. I think, it's such a powerful time in history, everybody, that when Jacques Vallée was studying this, he starts the book with the diary of Laura Fermi, the wife of Enrico Fermi, because she didn't know what her husband was going to do that day. And she tells about taking the kids to school, coming home, her husband just throwing himself on the bed. It's like the day the earth stood still. It was a change of history. So the beauty of Trinity is the research that Jacques Vallée did on, number one, the capitulation of Japan. He read all the books, the current books about that, and you'll find out, even though the bomb was used, the emperor had already decided to surrender. And he talked about the generals under him did not want to. They actually committed suicide when the emperor said we're going to surrender, and that's in the book because he did a lot of research there. So does that mean we really needed to use those bombs? I mean, there's a lot of questions that come up. Because the book is historic. It's a UFO book, yes, but it isn't a UFO book. It's a timeline book on what happened that would cause an incident like 1945. And so I'm going to go to the PowerPoint, which is quite short because I want Jacques to be able to tell you his side of the research. My side was, I did what I was supposed to do. I went to see Remy. You saw Remy. By the way, that film footage of Remy was taken by Swiss TV. I sent them up there to film him because I wanted to make sure I got him. One of the things that I've heard Don Schmidt say about Roswell is that it's a fight with the Undertaker. We're dealing with people that, these kids were 7 and 9, but yet when I got to them, they're 70, and Jose now I think is 80, 86. It's really very difficult. You can imagine how many more people I could have gotten in the story. When the boys did go home, they told the father and they told Sheriff Apodaca. about it, so that the father and Sheriff Apodaca the next day went back with the boys. There was nobody there. The craft was covered in brush because somebody had been there. And Sheriff Apodaca and the father go inside the craft, and they're in there for 45 minutes. Can you imagine if I could have talked to them? You know, because that's the first time I've heard of where 3 people were inside a spacecraft. That's Sheriff Apodaca, the father Faustino, and Jose, who's still alive. And the thing, I've been to the cemetery. I've seen Faustino's grave. Everybody is really related in San Antonio is so small. This is just an aside. Jose Padilla's family is related to Alani Zamora. And in the book, because it's an egg-shaped craft, Jacques has the Zamora case. It is the case that changed the mind of Dr. J. Allen Hynek. I mean, Jacques said he was following it with Hynek, and Hynek was just blown away, because before the Zamora case, he wanted the ultimate case that he could go to Blue Book with. And so 10 miles down the road is Lonnie Zamora's case, years later, and Jose Padilla is related to Zamora's wife. And Sheriff Apodaca is also, you know, a very credible person. He's like Zamora, a state trooper person. So could you imagine if I'd heard about it 20 years before, how many people I could have really talked to? So I'm going to go. I mean, the PowerPoint is very, very superficial. I thought the movie would give you an idea because you can see the people. But the PowerPoint is just, and I will share it with you now, is just to show you something like the metal that was taken from inside and so forth. So here we are. This is from German. We have done so many interviews, Jacques and I. Let me get this working here. That we've just done so many, that, and one of them is Germany. We did Germany, we did Portugal, we did so many. We did Germany, Portugal, we did Argentina, because this case is so incredibly important. People need to know. It's like, for us, for me especially, that's a teacher, you got to study stuff. You've got to study it. You can't just go on YouTube, hear somebody talking about it, and that's the way it is. So the book Trinity in Italian just came out. What we've decided to do, because it was easier on both of us, was we decided we were going to just self-publish and get it out there. And so we self-published it. I self-published it in Italian too. It's out there in Italian. Jacques is finished this week with the French version, and we have the Spanish version. The Spanish version will be ready on September 1st, so that the people of the world can put this in their libraries. That's why we're doing it. That was, by the way, my website, www.paolaharris.com. So here's the atomic bomb and what happened in 1945. There I am in the living room of Remy Baca. Here I am in the living room of Jose Padilla. This is the area, San Antonio, San Antonito. And on the cover of the book, which you'll see, there is Mama Grande. Mama Grande is Jose's great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, actually. That's the area. And there is Jose as a child. And it's very important because, you know, this is, yes, there's UFOs in this book, but what happened in San Antonio, what crashed there, is a statement about the planet and about our use of nuclear power. And it is very important that we cover the background. And I think Jacques will talk about that. On the back cover is a photo of Jacques and Bill Crowley, and I'm glad Bill and Tamara are with us tonight. I brought Bill with me because Jacques wanted to go and look for pieces of metal. And I thought if he falls, he was 80, I think he was 81 years old or something. He's 6'4". I thought, you know, I have asked Bill to work with me, and other times he's played kind of the Mulder. And I said, could you just come and make sure he doesn't fall or anything, so no snake bites him, or he's going to be healthy when he walks out of there, because he did a lot of walking in those mesquite bushes. Later on, last year, I asked Tamara to come with me because it's very important, I think, when you do research that you, especially if your spouse, if your significant other is interested, that you have a common ground you can talk about. So bringing her with me, plus the fact that she's another woman, and we need more women in ufology, it really helped because we could have a common dialogue tonight, all three of us. That is the old Owl Bar and Cafe. It's been remodeled. You can see the 1950s cars there. That is on the corner there of the Pan American Highway, which was a very, very traffic spot. When the people that own that, I've been in there so often, they see me come in, they know I bring everybody there. I've talked to them. The woman that owns that, her family said that when the Manhattan Project scientists went in there, because they had briefcases, it was top secret. Everybody knows it was top secret. They didn't want Russia to know they were working on a bomb. That everybody thought they were prospectors or salesmen because they had leather briefcases. They had no idea who these men were with these leather briefcases. There I am in Gig Harbor, Washington in 2010 with Remy. He was to die 3 years later in 2013. But here I am at his kitchen. Now I'm holding the Prince Albert can because Remy and Jose found one piece of foil, that famous foil that curls up and then goes back, one piece. Later on, when I found the third witness, Sabrina, who was 7 years old, come to find out that Faustino, the dad, had gone back to the crash site and picked up long strips of that stuff. So Sabrina's telling me that she played with it because they didn't have a slinky. So she'd wad it up and it'd go back to the way it was. Now, can you imagine if I could have gotten to them sooner? Anyway, she said that the father, Faustino, had gone back there and found more of it. Remy just told me he had one piece, it was a square piece, and he put it in his Prince Albert can. So when they give me details like that, I said, where is it? And he goes, we fixed a windmill with it. And he said, because there was a windmill that needed fixing and nothing would work. So they went in and they said, maybe this foil, if we wrap it around, it won't, it'll hold it and so forth. And it did hold it. But this is the naivete we're dealing with of these boys. I mean, they fixed a windmill with a piece of the inside of a craft. Here's Jose and Remy together when they're older. I have been doing some research with the MJ12 documents, and you have Bob Wood and Ryan Wood that have this. Ryan has this on his website. May I suggest you read it? For me, I was looking at what was going on if Oppenheimer, Einstein, Fermi, all those guys were down there, and this thing crashed 1 month after the atomic bomb. They're still there. I mean, Oppenheimer and those guys are still messing around in that area. Then this comes out in June of 1947. This document, remember when Roswell was July, not June. And this is called Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies. And it says it talks about, in principle, there is no difficulty in accepting the possibility of the coming to the understanding with this and of establishing all kinds of relationships, the difficulty in trying to establish the principles on which these relationships should be based, and it talks about cosmic cultures. If these intelligent beings were in possession of a soar or less culture, or more or less culture, and it talks about them as cultures, and it calls them celestial bodies, not celestial. And you can see, and it's authored by Einstein and Oppenheimer. It's on Ryan Wood's website. Please look at it. And I didn't show the whole document, but at the end of the document, it was given to Vannevar Bush, and it was asked to be given to President Truman, and Vannevar Bush said no. He said he wasn't, that it was not going to be given. And you can see the signatures if you go to Ryan Wood's website of Oppenheimer and Einstein there. And they're suggesting that there be a supra United Nations, which means something that can handle it, because our United Nations can't. Of course it can't. Jacques can tell you about that, you know, with Grenada in 1979, and Gordon Cooper and Stanton Friedman and Jacques and Hynek with Sir Eric Gehry going to the United Nations trying to deal with UFOs, and they just kicked it out. Well, in 1947, before Roswell, Einstein and Oppenheimer said, we have a problem, Houston. We got to do something, because we have caused a problem here on Earth where we're getting a lot of sightings in New Mexico. So there's a lot of retrievals in New Mexico. I'm not even going to name them all, but that area. So here we are with the men in White Sands. And Jacques did an amazing job. He said that they learned a lot from this was not a test, from exploding the bomb. They learned that, first of all, there were 70,000 people that didn't bother to tell them, number one. The fallout went out 150 miles. It killed most of the plant life. In fact, every time I go there, Jose says, well, those mesquites used to be at least 7 or 8 feet tall, because we used to go under them for shade. Well, they're not even more than 2.5 feet tall right now. And, you know, and when they did do the bomb explosion there, they took the animals and sent them back to, I think, Kentucky to be tested. And they learned that by having the bomb explode on the ground, it was more dangerous. So they exploded it in the air in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, so that the fallout would not be as bad, but they practiced here. I mean, this historical news is incredible. This is these are the guys at the McDonald Ranch that are putting, this is from the scrapbook that Remy had. Okay, now, if somebody wants to do a presentation on the visitations or the problem we have with UFOs, UAPs, and whatever you want to call them, over nuclear sites, my goodness, I've got a list a mile long. But Robert Salas, who is a friend, was in a bunker, as you know, in Maelstrom Air Force Base. And he was there when, 10 Minuteman missiles were shut down during the Cold War. And after that, he testified at at the Disclosure Project, at the Citizen hearing. He told me that when he was underground there in his bunker, he heard in his head the words, "We can shut you down." Well, they did, one by one, and then the next week, they didn't blow up. I have to say this because what's going on is ridiculous. The agenda through the release of information through the government has an agenda to it. If truly UFOs were a threat, it would have been way back when that we would have had a space war. I mean, because this started a whole kind of wrinkle in time and in dimension. We would have had it back then. Or they would have destroyed the missiles at Maelstrom. They wouldn't have just shut them down and said, "We can't shut you down." That is a warning. It is not a space war. It is not a threat. And anybody that thinks that what's coming out of the government right now is a threat is delusional. You know, it's just, for me, watch the agenda. The agenda is to go to present it as a threat so we can probably get appropriations. So I really feel the need, because this whole nuclear thing, if you do a presentation, Hastings has an incredible presentation on this. I suggest that you have him do a presentation sometime. But the idea we can shut you down, you know, messages that we're getting about our use of nuclear, and this was atomic bomb. Years later, we started testing the hydrogen bomb. And the people I was interviewing from Italy that were on the islands of Fangatofa and the Bikini Atoll were telling me about the UFO flyovers and the 3 feet of dead fish on the runway. So this is only atomic. We did hydrogen. French did 800 tests till the Australians stopped them. If that isn't an example of the fact that we are absolutely massacring the planet, and whatever's flying over is just warning, then I don't know what it is. Too many warnings, too many sightings beginning in 1947. Here is the photo of Remy Baca. Here are the guys when they're teenagers. This is, you know, Jose was telling me when he was in diapers, he was riding a horse. Because everybody did, and the men were in World War II. So when you got older, you had to help out around the town. This is a kind of a drawing of the boys watching the recovery. Now, what happened after Sheriff Apodaca and Faustina went inside, the army came and they started the recovery. The problem is they could not get that thing under the underpass unless it was, they put it on a crane, a cherry picker, and they put it sideways so it would go under the underpass. And the boys were not wearing hazmat suits. This is the first time they'd ever seen anything like this. You know, Kenneth Arnold was in 1947. I mean, they don't know what this is. They don't know what they're cleaning up. Nobody talked about UFOs. This is before Roswell, before Kenneth Arnold. And so the boys don't even know what it is. I mean, they did see the little beings. I'll talk about that in a minute. Here is Jacques. Jacques is in the car. He was in his own element because we did go out to ground zero. We happened to be there. This is the inside casing of one of the bombs. And we did go out the one day that they allow you to go out. I think it was in October. And it was shocking for him to walk around that area. I had been there 2 times before because I had to understand what was going on. There is Jose and Jacques and Bill Crowley looking for anything. See, when the young men were cleaning up the recovery, they didn't want to clean up all the pieces. So what they did is with their foot, they made a berm and they threw the pieces in there. So after 65 years, Jacques figured that they had washed down into the gully there. So he's looking around to see if he can find anything. Here is Remy looking at the gouge, because that gouge was there for a long time. This is how this is a representation of how it stuck in the ground. And this is what they said the beings look like, but they weren't mantis, they were grays. But what they saw, what the boys saw were eyes that were tear-shaped eyes. And they said they had gray skin, gray outfit, but they didn't know if it was an outfit. They looked like little kids, they said. Long, spindly arms. But they didn't know what to compare it with because, of course, they're not seeing anything in a magazine. They're not seeing anything to compare it with. So they compared it with a capamosha, which is kind of a cricket-like thing. This is the piece that Jose went in to get. He took it off of a plaque that was 2 feet by 2 feet, 2 feet by 3 feet. The middle had a pin. So you could see that hole, it had a pin. And he said he couldn't pull it off the plaque. It spun. There was a circle in copper around it. So Jose's convinced it was a navigation thing. Jacques is convinced that the army made it. It's a real mystery right now. You can see we've cut so many pieces off of it to be analyzed. It's being analyzed now in Silicon Valley. It was analyzed by Jaime Maussan. It was analyzed by James Rigney in Australia. I sent it, we sent it everywhere. There it is, the piece, and it's pretty big. And where is it right now? It's with Jacques Vallée in an undisclosed place. But Jose gave it to us with the understanding that when Jacques archived my work and Whitley Striever's goes to Rice University in Houston, Texas, that piece will go too. We want our archive to be accessible to everybody in the future in a university setting, not in a circus type, touristy kind of thing. We want people to study this. So what we are sending everything to Rice University, the Department of Religious Studies with Jeff Kripal. And what's interesting is that on the bottom left, on the bottom is the picture of the stereoscopic microscope. Jaime Maussan paid $5,000 to have it done in Mexico. And I kept insisting that that picture should be looked at here in the United States because there seems to be something growing out of it that looks like hair. It's not hair. What Jaime said, it was a carbon nanotubes. So here in Silicon Valley, they went and looked at it too. And you can see there is a similar thing right here coming out of it, but they don't know what it is. There's more research that needs to be done. And yes, right now they analyzed it. It's a kind of aluminum, very light. It's called selenium. No, it is not a piece of a windmill. We bought the piece. It's amazing because when we started working on this, a very famous geologist in Roswell went on the stage and said we were spinning our wheels because that was the piece of a windmill. And he gave the number of the piece. We bought it, and it's nothing like it, nor is it made of iron, nor is it the same weight. So it's amazing how our own people debunk our own research. It's our own people instead of getting involved. And actually, there is no competition between the Roswell. This helps the Roswell case. This was first. This really happened. Here's a drawing of what Jose saw. He said it spun around on that plate, as you can see. I had a copper. We used kind of a 3D printing thing to actually make that plate so that we could see it, how it would be. Nobody knows what that's about. Jacques is convinced that the army did it. Jose thinks no, I don't know, and I don't care about metal anyway. So I care more about, here's what it looks like on the bottom. What he said was there were no screws that would snap. And the problem that Jacques has now, and when it was measured in centimeters and not inches. And in those days in 1945, especially in Los Alamos, they did not use the metric system. So why is it in the metric system? So there's all these questions there. We cut so much off of this thing that, to be analyzed. There's Remy with it in his hand. There is another picture of it. And here's the, whatever it is that's growing out of it. I'm confused because it looks like it's growing out of the cut also. So there's the one that was done here. Now, this is the end of my presentation because I got to let Jacques talk. But, he hasn't covered this. He won't touch this. In the movie that you saw, there were poisonous plants when I was talking to Jose and when Jan Harzan was there. Jan was there to analyze poisonous plants. It was a mistake what the analysis was. It's not Jimson weed. That's not poisonous. What it was, and I sent it to the University of Colorado, and Jacques sent it to UCLA. I mean, to the university in the Palo Alto there, and it's cocklespur, and cocklespur is very toxic. So after I'd been there for like 3 years, they planted in the circle where the UFO was this cocklespur. Tom Hamlin, who is second from the left here, picked it up and had an anaphylactic reaction to it. He blew up. He basically, his eyes and his whole face was swollen. He could barely breathe. So I knew that that was done purposely because they don't want us there. They don't want us digging. They don't want us there. I mean, they've raised the area at least 25 feet since the thing happened. And these are the people that are the heroes that work with me initially. And we have to add Tamara, and we have to add Bill Crowley to this group. And this is Jaime Maussan here. This is Tom Hamlin. This is David Garcia. He did a lot of digging, and I'll tell you, there were a lot of snakes. Oh my God. And he's so brave. This is the guy that made the movie. And Jan was there. He basically was one of the first things he had ever done and was blown out of the water by the field research. This is James Rigney from Australia, who had been there to collect the plant. I had to go back and get samples of the plants because the MUFON, analysis of Jimson weed was done on a microscope, and plants have DNA. You don't look at them you have to actually look at the DNA. So this guy went back with me to pick up the plant and send it to the university. He did a lot, James Rigney. He's from Australia. He was working with me, all these guys. But we have a problem back here. This was Laughlin, Nevada, my conference. We've had too many paranormal things happen around here. It was not in the books. So I'm going to tell you about it. First of all, Jose and his wife filmed. They took a picture with a Brownie camera years before of a Confederate soldier standing on a hill near the crash site. That needs to be talked about eventually. There was a Confederate soldier. The wife took the picture. He came out in the picture. Remy had the picture and the picture disappeared, but he talks about it. How could a Confederate soldier be standing in the middle of nowhere? Also, Bill, I will add this because this is the truth. You heard Jose say that he saw Big Ape jumping over the fence. So we're talking about Bigfoot. And he said the Big Ape scared his stallion and just floated over the fence. So we got that as a problem. This is the paranormal that accompanies what we're working on, and we can't throw it away. Now, this is a problem back here. This guy did not exist. I don't know who the heck he is, but Jose recognizes him. He said he met him in an abandoned casino. He said the guy came up to him and said, "Thank you for your service," because, Jose was in the Korean War. And then he turned around and he said, ETs are walking the earth. And Jose, who was with his girlfriend, turned around and said, "Can we invite him to dinner?" And he disappeared. Now, I have to tell you that because I don't want to, who is that? What is that? But Jose said he looks just like him. He looks just like the guy he saw in the casino. So is there paranormal around UFO stuff? Yes. Did we put it in the book? No. But, this is the picture. This is my conference in 2014 in Laughlin. We covered it, everybody that was there. And this year in Laughlin, I'm going to cover it again. Everybody that was there is coming, and they're going to sit with Jacques Vallée, including Jaime Maussan, and they're going to brainstorm because that's what you should be done. Everybody that is working on something should be sharing research, not saying this is mine or competing or of debunking. I mean, good grief, the silliness that came out when we wrote the book about, oh yeah, they're peddling that old story. It's like, it's a windmill piece. No, come on. You think Jacques Vallée would be playing around with the windmill piece after 4 years? So the thing is that we will have a meeting in Laughlin. I am having a conference November 12th through 14th. I have Jacques there. I have Jaime Maussan there. And physically, I will have David Garcia and the Crowleys and Tom Hamlin, who was there, so that they can all have a really good conversation and about what they think and what they felt. And because I've been there so often, that site has changed so often. So that's the end of my presentation. I know you have a million questions, but let's listen to Jacques because I'm very grateful this story would have never come out if he hadn't taken an interest in it and really, supported me in my work. Thank God.